Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. As he just introduced, I'm Nancy Twine, and I'm the founder and CEO of Briogeo Hair Care. So Briogeo is a natural hair care product line that I started in my studio apartment a couple of years ago in New York City, and we're really focused on bridging the gap between clean ingredients and high-performing hair care. Our products retail globally in places like Sephora, QVC, Anthropologie, and Nordstrom, and we've either doubled or tripled our business year over year since we launched in 2013. We're currently the #2 digital hair care brand at Sephora, and we're the fastest growing hair care brand at Sephora as well. One just interesting fact, I'm actually the sole founder of my company. I've never taken any VC investment. I don't have a management team, and I don't have a board. So I've really relied on my own passion, tenacity, and grit, and my own savvy of the beauty industry to propel my business forward. And a couple of things that I'm going to talk to you about today are what inspired me. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my childhood. I'm going to talk to you about how I built my business. And then I'm going to talk to you just about a few key lessons that I've learned along the way. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. I was never into sports or dance class or other traditional childhood activities. Instead, I always had an appreciation for commerce, and I loved to create things, but I also love to transact. And transacting really signified to me that my creativity wasn't just something that I acknowledged, but that other people acknowledged as well, to the point that they were willing to actually invest in what it was I had to offer. So during my preteen years, a lot of my creativity centered around crafts. And some of you may remember the movie Clueless with Alicia Silverstone as Cher. But in my middle school class, every single girl wanted to either dress like Cher or have the same accessories as her. And everyone wanted one of those signature feather pens. Does anyone remember those feather pens? Okay, a few of you do. But at the time, this was kind of pre-internet stage where you could just do a Google search and find whatever you wanted. No one was selling these feather pens. So I got a ride to our local Michael's craft store, and I took the money in my piggy bank, and I bought some pens, I bought some ribbons, some feather and glue, and I literally made identical replicas of those coveted feather pens. And I brought them to class the next day. I sold out of all of my inventory. I had a wait list for more. And at the time, I was 11 years old, and that was really my first segue into entrepreneurism. Even while I was a student at UVA, I juggled a few different jobs, and I was also running an online jewelry company at the time that I actually managed to get class credit for. And really working at an early age to earn what it was I wanted taught me a lot about grit and tenacity. And those are two key traits that I still leverage every single day running Briogeo. So really the purpose of me telling you all of this is just to give you a little bit of a glimpse into really what inspires me and what motivates me. And those recurring traits of wanting to build and to create and to run a business are a part of who I am today in the same way that they were when I was just a young kid. So whether you're like me, or maybe you didn't really realize your entrepreneurial calling until your adult age, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're able to identify with an inner calling, something that feels really deep-rooted and authentic that is driving that entrepreneurial passion. And the reason why that's so important is because in anyone's entrepreneurial journey, there are going to be rough times. And it's really that passion that helps to get you through it. Because it's those tough times, those are the times in which most people quit and they just give up and they never get a chance to actually realize their true potential. And I will say this, successful entrepreneurs definitely are not just lucky. They just don't fall into the right idea at the right time. Overnight success definitely is not a thing. Successful entrepreneurs tap into an inner calling, a purpose and a drive that is so insurmountable that because of it, they never let anything stop them from their vision. So no matter how hard it gets, they keep pushing through, and that's a real key important thing to take away. So now I want to just talk to you a little bit about how I got to where I am today. So I graduated from the McIntyre School of Commerce in 2007. I was a finance major, and I immediately took a job at Goldman Sachs right thereafter. And if you can remember, 2007 was a really trying time for the financial industry. Actually, during my first few weeks on the job, both Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers went under, so it was a really scary time. I will tell you this, finance, sales and trading, commodities, that was not my passion at all, but I was a finance major, and I had interned at Goldman my 2 summers prior, and I knew that this job was probably one of the most lucrative positions that I could get straight out of undergrad. And I knew that if I played my cards right, I could save up some money and be able to put it towards a passion one day, and that's exactly what I did. So despite the financial climate at the time, I actually managed to do pretty well at Goldman Sachs. I was promoted during each cycle, I was in the top quartile of my class, and I even earned the title of vice president by the age of 27. But even with all of that success, I just really wasn't satisfied in what my future was going to look like in that role. And I just knew that I had a lot more creative talent that I wasn't utilizing. In 2010, midway through my career at Goldman, I lost my mother really tragically and really suddenly. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that life is short, and you really, really do just have to make the most of this time that you're given. And after my mom passed, I started doing a lot of soul searching to figure out what it was I really wanted to do so that I could just go out there and do it. I really began soul searching to figure out how I could tap back into that entrepreneurial spirit, but also actually create a living for myself and do something that was truly a real business. And during this time, I returned to some of my childhood roots, quite literally. That's actually a photo of me making some products in my East Village, New York City studio apartment. But prior to that, when I was a kid, me and my mom used to go to our local health food store and buy different natural ingredients, and we would transform them into these incredible beauty products. Everything from body scrubs to facial treatments to hair care, you name it. And it was truly phenomenal. On this next slide is actually a photo of my mom, who was a chemist. And my mom was one of 8 children. They grew up in West Virginia. And my grandmother, they lived on a farm. She would use a lot of the ingredients from her garden to make a lot of the family's personal care products from scratch in the kitchen of her home. So this idea of making natural beauty products was one that was actually passed down through the generations. And actually, before my mom passed away, she was in the middle of bringing to market a skincare product that she had spent the last year perfecting. So this whole idea was really kind of deep-rooted in my family the whole time. So one of the things that I took note of during my exploratory journey was the fact that there was a big change that was happening in the personal care industry. And it kind of started with food and then dipped into personal care. But it was that more and more retail stores were allocating shelf space to green, clean, and natural brands. And this wasn't just happening at places like Whole Foods, but it was starting to happen in even more premium retailers like Sephora. And, I thought back to all of these amazing natural concoctions my mom and I used to make, my grandmother used to make, and I thought, wow, had it been just, a couple decades later, we really could have had a booming business. So once I understood my vision, I really started to do the research. I spent a lot of time at the New York Small Business Library accessing free research reports on the personal care industry. I went to salons to ask stylists about what kind of hair care products their clients were looking for. And then I started to do a lot of research into the competitive landscape as well. And before I knew it, I had a solid business plan on paper, and I started to feel confident about tapping into my savings to actually put towards moving this thing forward. So I used my nights and weekends from Goldman to attend trade shows and network, and really to try to find a cosmetic chemist that could help me develop my first 4 formulas to scale. And after a lot of overpromising and disappointments and several shady contract proposals, I finally found a terrific natural chemist that helped me to formulate my first 4 products. But before I finalized my formulations, I knew it was going to be important to get feedback because I wanted to make sure that even though I loved my formulas so much, that other people did as well. So I did a focus group with friends, friends of friends, and family members to really understand what it was that they liked and did not like about my products. And I would say that that's really key. Whenever you're starting something new, always seek feedback. No matter how great you think your product or service is, feedback is going to actually allow you to challenge your way of thinking and even inspire you to make some changes to your idea that maybe you would have never even thought about. So once I felt confident with my formulas and my packaging design, I manufactured my first 4 products, which are these up here on the screen. And I knew that I was ready now to start transacting. So I want to also just take a minute here to reiterate the fact that I had never done anything like this before. I had never created an actual personal care product that was ready to be sold. And the reason why I want to tell you that is because whatever it is you want to do, even if it sounds so hard or insurmountable, you could figure it out. You really, really can. And I know that there are a lot of burgeoning entrepreneurs that sometimes feel stuck because they don't know where to start. And what I say to that is, let your passion, your tenacity, and Google search, because I spent a lot of time Google searching, trust me, let that be your roadmap. You will figure it out just like I did. So once I had product, I started researching trade shows, and I stumbled upon Cosmoprof, which is North America's largest beauty trade show. And I applied to a special section of the show that was focused on new and emerging beauty brands. I paid this ridiculous amount. It was like $5,000 for this small table, but it was actually one of the best investments that I made early on in my entrepreneurial journey. Little did I realize that major buyers from places like Sephora and Nordstrom and Urban Outfitters were all there, and they were looking for that next big indie beauty brand to add to their assortments. And luckily, I brought with me tons of product samples. I gave them out to every single buyer that came to my booth. And the buyers that tried my products that same night came back the next day and expressed interest in carrying my brand. In fact, by the time I returned to my seat at Goldman on Monday morning, I already had purchase order commitments from Urban Outfitters and Fred Segal. So it was pretty incredible. But when the real magic happened was 6 months later. I had actually spent the past 6 months emailing, like on a weekly basis, the buyers at Sephora, sending them press clips and product testimonials, because I knew that that was like the it retailer that I was aspiring towards. And 6 months later, I finally got a response. And they told me that hair care was kind of the next big category that they really wanted to focus on. And they thought that what we had to offer was diverse, it was special, it was natural. They didn't have any natural hair care at Sephora at the time, and they wanted to bring the brand on. So a week later, after receiving that email, I quit my job at Goldman Sachs. And actually 3 days ago marks the 4-year anniversary from when I took that leap of faith. And it was one of the best decisions I could have ever made. And while the brand has grown tremendously over the past 4 years, there are several lessons that I've learned along the way, and I'm going to share a couple of those with you right now. So here's the first one. The right people are your company's best asset. When I first started Briogeo, I was my only employee for the first year, and I really relied, again, on those values of passion and grit and tenacity to drive my business forward. But at a point, I realized that I needed help, and I had to hire people. And as I started hiring people, I was really shocked to see the difference in the way that they worked versus the way that I worked. And I was actually really disappointed. I felt like I could get the job done better myself, so why was I paying someone only to motivate them to do the job that I could do? It just didn't make sense to me. But then I later realized that I had hired smart and talented individuals, but they just weren't aligned with the values and goals of my company. And their success didn't just depend on them. I had to clearly define my company goals, I had to mentor them, and I had to engage them in order to give them a fair shot at working for my company. And that was a really key learning that I learned very early on. And then the next 3 lessons actually come from my company's values and goals, which you can find on my company's website. The first foundational belief is that no 2 strands are the same. So to create a successful path for employing and keeping the best talent, as I mentioned, I had to define my company's values and goals. And then I had to identify which candidates that I was interviewing were aligned with that philosophy. And then once I found the right candidate, it was up to me to engage them in their role, to make them part of the conversation, and to challenge them to think beyond the status quo. And I really do believe that people perform the best and they stick around for the long haul when they're challenged and they truly feel like they matter to the company. So the lesson here is you want to cultivate a strong team that will help you to drive your business forward. Define a clear path to success, but then you have to coach people towards it. So the second foundational belief is clean and natural is best. So I spend a lot of time interviewing candidates these days, and one of the questions that I always ask towards the end of the interview is, so why are you looking for a new job? And sometimes I get the response of, well, I'm looking to leave because I feel stuck. I just feel like I can't get anything done. There's so much red tape. There's so many hoops to go through. I'm not growing in my career. And I always am a little shocked when I hear that response because every company wants to set themselves up for growth, but sometimes that growth actually ends up hindering their growth. And so what I mean by that is this. Right now, we are a lean, gritty company. We can work really quickly to get things done. We don't have this exorbitant hierarchical structure. But I know that as we grow, there are going to be things that actually test that structure over time. And my team and I, we're really going to have to evolve in a way where we can continue to make smart, quick decisions and push ideas forward, but most importantly, while maintaining control. So the key lesson here is that you want to align your internal business practices with your growth goals to allow the evolution of your business to flow seamlessly and organically and not get in the way of your success. And the final foundation is excel without sacrificing your values. You always want to stay true to your core. I talked about defining people values, but equally as important, you really want to define your brand values. Understand what your brand is, but as equally as important, what your brand is not. It's easy to become threatened by new competition and new trends, which oftentimes may not align with how you do things within your business. And while it's important to follow trends and keep an eye on your competition, you want to remain congruent with your brand's authentic self along the way. And I will say this. Customers these days, they really do call the shots. They are discerning, they speak out on social media, and they totally see through the hype. And you really build the strongest brand equity when your message and your vision are consistent. And that's not to say that they can't change over time, because even in Briogeo's 4 years, we've done a lot of changing, but any change needs to be authentic and backed up by your core values and your mission. So the key takeaway here is, don't let competition or misaligned trends steer the path that you have created. Stay true to your core. Build the kind of deep roots from which the strongest company can grow and thrive. So that's it. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be on the stage. It's a really exciting thing to be back here at UVA. And I really hope that my stories about values and passion and tenacity and grit help to inspire you and even challenge the way that you run your organization today, or maybe that organization that you plan on building one day. And I just want to say too, begin taking smart risks today. Your small wins will really snowball if you can maintain a laser-like focus on your dream. And also, avoid giving up too soon. Thank you.